Welcome to Make a Path Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and here we are for the fifth and final part of Doomsday Kingdom, issue number 1, audio commentary with writer, that's me, and artist from the UK. Here with me now, James Milne. We're going to dive right into where we left off from part 4. And if you didn't watch the other parts, they are still up on this YouTube channel. You can find the links at the end of the video or down in that video description. And then on the next page, some of these were the ones I was probably the most excited to talk about. See, I had nothing to do with this Eddie one. I wrote the zombie shield and the zombie and all, but when I wrote it in the script, it was originally just a zombie. So how did we get an Eddie zombie?
Eddie was one of these kind people from the Map family that supported behind the scenes simply by purchasing some original artwork. He asked for a commission, which was to do with Walter White against some zombies, which we'll put a picture up on the screen so you can see it. And because of that, he kind of paid his way into the comic, but I just thought it'd be funny just to every now and then put in a Map family member, because ultimately you are what is making the comic possible by, buying the comic. So my way of rewarding some of you is to, especially those that I really like and know and that I speak a lot to, you'll probably be in the comic at some point. The whole name tag wasn't specifically because Eddie was in it. That was just because I put him in a white shirt, and I love Shaun of the Dead, but you don't really like it that much. The main character, Shaun, has the name tag, and it's like the joke is like you've got red on you from like the pen leaking or whatever. So I did it with blood, which was the reason why he has a name tag on, just a little Shaun of the Dead homage. But I mean, if I wanted to do like a on the nose, in your face one, I should have just obviously done a white guy, but we're not discriminating. But I love this as well because of like the flesh like coming off the face or whatever. The eyes are slowly, like that was the streak thing you mentioned, like the flesh is like slowly starting to go over his eye, which eventually will be sinking in. And this one's more prominent with the whole, instead of being the pupils in the center, all of them blood vessels like go up, and then there's like a little white circular gap. So that was just like my way of just making it a little bit more interesting instead of just doing a flat color. And then again, his like teeth, some of the teeth are missing from people that he's eaten in the past or whatever, and the flesh is slowly coming from his wrist bones. That bit always freaks me out because I've got skinny arms, so like them little bones bits under the wrist.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like are very prevalent on my body. So like just the idea of seeing them like snap or like getting cut with like tweezers or whatever like freaks me out. So I just like putting stuff in there. And then we get the rider, as he's just got his bearings from before. He's just got up, but he's been greeted with, the Eddie zombie or whatever, which is, I like these 3 panels as well. Again, trying to make the panels look a little bit different just to break it up, so we're not just so plain in the paneling.
Hey, you know what? I found an error that I'll just show you. On the next page, he actually wears a tool belt to keep the creep on the board when he's still. Well, I remember bringing that up to you. I don't know how I screwed it up, but I meant to say, like, it's not actually connected when he hits him, because he, like, lifts it off of the hook to take the weight off, and he jams him with the shield, and then he puts it back on the hook. And every time I look at that, I think, damn it, why didn't I make that clear?
That doesn't change anything. It's just the fact the whole purpose of that belt in real life is so that you can support something on. So like, even though he's a strong guy and he could like technically just like lift him off freehand, you still like, again, with the realism, you still want to preserve some of your energy. And the fact is, like, the zombie is so close to him so that you wouldn't see the Guardian, even because he's bigger. It just made sense for it to be as close to his chest as possible, which meant it may as well still be connected in the thing, because it's not like it's cemented in, or there's like a tricky way of locking in the shield to his belt. It's literally just like a bit of bent metal that gives you a little bit of stability as you're holding stuff, because like the handles are on there as well.
Yeah, I still feel like it would be tricky for him to get that momentum, though, is what I'm saying, with that metal still connected. I always had the idea that, when he's standing still or doing his marching or walking or this, that, and the third, it was connected. That's what, in the story, that's how I designed it. But then when he actually hits him, he just kind of gives it that little lift off of the metal plate and just hits him. And then he sets the creep shield on the ground. But moving on.
But the little visual things I added in this page was to show that he had long hair, because we weren't specific in saying like, oh, he's got short hair or long hair. Long hair just made sense in this time, in this part in the timeline, because time's passed or whatever. Like long hair, scraggy beards, like shows you that they're not going to the hairdressers every day. But some people to this day didn't realize that the skull cap that he wears and his hair are two different things. Like, people were just assuming like the skull cap was his hair, even though I coloured them different. But I also just wanted to show that he was all like, when he first got dressed, like put on the suit or whatever and the mask, he tied his hair back because he wants obviously the best vision he can get. He's got the long tails of his skull cap as well, like tied behind his head. And then just to show that things are actually happening, because sometimes you'll see comics where there's stuff that's supposed to be fluidly moving, like hair, but doesn't. It's just like a static thing. It just looks like it's a piece of clay shaped into a hairstyle or whatever. So I just wanted to show that the ponytail's like slowly coming out, which also helps for the end page to not fully reveal his face, like you'd have with him looking down, like his hair coming across his face, and then eventually you'd see that he has a beard as well, which is just another visual thing I put in there. But people seem to think that he had short hair all this time and didn't notice that he had a ponytail and long hair.
No kidding. I didn't know people thought that.
Yeah, I had a couple of people mention it.
Nice. And then got close to the end here. Why isn't it moving? There we go. We have I guess we can call it the second
massive box of text.
Yeah, the massive box of text. But to the left of the bigette, that is a big ass box of text compared to this guy. I did say in the other video, if we do end up re-releasing this and either publishing, or if we come out with like some super duper variant or something, I'll end up breaking this down. I kind of will see how people will like that better, because I do know there's it's standard to have it broken down, and I get it. There's a part of me that gets it, but then there's a part of me that as a reader, I fucking hate that shit. Like, if you take a whole page and it's the same person talking and you got 7 different word bubbles, I don't know why. I might be the only one, but my God, does it bother the shit out of me. Just let me read it all and get out of my way. But
it never bothered me.
I think I'm in the minority.
There is a lot of text there.
Yeah, there is a lot, but
a lot of people were just like, you're supposed to show, not tell kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, they would have just extended the comic like by 4 more pages or whatever. And also, you want to hold some things close to the vest, because...
Oh, if there's any fans saying that, I'll tell you right now, I disagree with them 100%. You can't show anything that's in this. This is a conversation that has to happen. There's nothing in this conversation you can show. There's only one thing. In the bottom, he says, I'm going to show you something that is going to blow your mind. And that, again, we can't talk about anything about that because it's a huge reveal. But everything else, you can't see that because we don't know if it's true. We need to be in the writer's position. We don't know if he has this good community. We don't know anything about whatever he's talking about. So, plus, in a way, he's talking about a whole community that's been around for years. I just meant like before when some people said it's easier to digest. In that case, yeah, maybe we'll break it down so it's easier to digest. But as far as like in a storytelling aspect, oh no, that's always going to stay in the back of the issue. It has to. It's important to their conversation, even moving forward.
Yeah. It was in specific one of the video reviews. He was just saying.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna hunt you down.
Sometimes you just gotta go with what we put on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not following a template of how to make or like draw or write a comic. It's like we're taking aspects that we like of comics and then making our own thing out of it. So some people have an issue with like a massive box of text, which if it wasn't there and there was less text, you're not going to convey the information you need. Like, it has to be there. There's no way around it. Unless, again, you wanted to show concretely that these things are all true.
Yeah. And I still feel...
again, the writer doesn't know. They're like, this is some random guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, telling him something.
And I do want to point out a couple things. I have, 5, I think, original titles that were gonna be the original title for years, right? It was up to 5. I think a couple, for example, I talked about one of the newer ones that
the main title.
Yeah, like the main title, like instead of Doomsday Kingdom, one of them was Dead Inside, but that obviously has been used to death with The Walking Dead. It's way too connected, and that comes from when you get sick. Even in issue 2 and 3, when we show people getting sick, like there's no coming back from that. Even when their heart's still beating and it's stage 1 and yada, there's no coming back from that. You're dead inside. So that was one of the ideas. And another one was after Doomsday. That was one of my simpler ones and one of my favorites, my personal. No one around me liked After Doomsday, but it was one of my favorites. And this dialogue is what gave birth to the title that ended up being it. So Doomsday Kingdom isn't here because it's the title. The title actually came from this dialogue right here where he says, after the world fell, we inherited this Doomsday Kingdom. And the reason is Doomsday Kingdom is actually a place. Like, it's an actual place. And full of the crazies, the monsters, the dead. Those are hints. And it's something that I want people to think of. Or when I was writing this, I wanted people to think of, is that one thing? Is that different things? What are the crazies compared to the monsters, compared to the dead returning to live? Again, as far as those two discussing that whole chunk there, I really felt that was important because of things we don't know. The Guardian who's talking, he might know more than we even know, more than the writer thinks he knows. He might know more than what he's seen standing by that tree. And that'll become more, important and play a bigger part in the story. And it'll understand some of what he's saying here to help understand why there's so much there. But it's hard to talk about because we're going to revisit this like 7 times. And if I talk about it now, you'll get more and more of the hints.
He's one big guy, by the way.
Yeah, he's a big fucker. You had that picture of his helmet. I'm going to put it in this video because I want people to see it. I love that. And I was half tempted.
You want to show his face?
Well, we can blur his eyes, mouth, his face. But I want to show, like, there's an image when I'm talking about where, because you don't care that they see a beard. His beard's coming out of the mask, right?
The concept sketch, you mean?
Yeah, the concept sketch. So we'll just take out like his face in the middle.
Yeah.
And they could see what I'm talking about. He looks so cool with the hair coming down over his shoulders and stuff. And I was half tempted to be like, man, have him take his mask off and hold it in his arm. But yeah, you're right. We'll save that.
Well, this was originally in this, the script to say the same. Like, he was described as having a helmet on because of using the Riot gear. Then, like, right at the end, after I'd drawn the page, you were like, oh, could we draw him, like, taking the helmet off or holding it by his side or whatever? But I kind of liked the fact that everything was mystery, like everyone's face were covered, because your original plan was not to have this as the first issue. But if we see these people, obviously we'll see these people later on in the timeline when it gets to it in the comic reading order, that you'll probably know who this is by the time you see that person. But for this one, for issue 1 being a whole mysterious new setting, it would make sense to have, just to keep the helmet on, because I think it just adds more to the mystery, even though it might be repetitive that everyone's face is covered. But it just looks, I just like the whole look of it overall, like, to show that they're using Riot gear. He's also incorporated some of the way the Rider's made his armor, with his little shoulder arm pads as well, which is made from leather or whatever. And then also I wanted to show visually, like, how strong, like, certain people in his community are, since they're the ones that do the human shields or whatever. The Riot vest is, like, all broken up because, like, he couldn't fit the tool belt over it, so he, like, just, like, snapped pieces off, like, just proper ruggedly just, like, snapped it off. And then again, like, you show his big fuck off knife by his side or whatever, and his little nut cup as well, just thinking safety first. And then I don't know what's in them pouches, but I'm interested to find out. But yeah, I just love, like, everyone has the same idea of, like, obviously protecting themselves, and it's interesting to see how communities cover themselves. I mean, the Skull people don't seem that smart, and they've only, like, covered the face for whatever the reason is that Ronnie's got. But these two, who are from different communities, have, like, got their own methods of, you know, disguising themselves as between creeps and also protecting themselves.
There is also, for any writers out there, and then we'll move on to the final page, there is also, like, as a writer, you're always coming up with ideas and concepts, and you're always thinking about a ton of different things. And sometimes, unless you don't ever want to get the story out there, you got to move ahead with the story when you have some things that aren't for sure. Like, I know why the Skullmen have theirs. The Guardian, there's a practical, like, there's two things. There's the practical, which is obviously to be fully shielded. They have a dangerous thing that they do, especially having the creep shields. The Rider and his get up, there's a whole history to that. The Prisoner was just because I didn't want to show his face, and then it eventually evolved into something cool, you know? But also, there's that part of me that's like, it has been processing, figuring out, you know what I mean, for a while about something in this world being the reason why a lot of people have their faces and mouths covered, you know. So as like a writer, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it as the practical just one way, or at this time I'm going to add more down the line, because there's definitely a possibility, and that possibility was left open on purpose because you don't have to, like, I know we're never going to come to the feeding post for a few issues yet, so I don't have to rush and answer that question. But that's one thing as a writer, if you're interested in moving forward with the projects, if there's an answer to a question you don't need today or next month, go ahead with the project and then come up with your thing, so that's something out there, that there could be in the story a reason why everyone has a mask on, but also there's a practical reason in case I don't go that route. But then we got the final page here, and I love what you did with the front page and the back page matching together.
That ties into the color thing as well.
Yeah, I didn't even think of or talk about or put in a script, or as far as I knew that took place in the same room.
Yeah, this issue was me finding my feet in how I want to color it, how I want to draw it. So that means that there's a lot of time spent on YouTube looking up color theory and the reasoning why comics and films all have distinctive color palettes or whatever. Instead of just everything being in local color, which means a red apple is red in a white light. But in real life, if you're photographing an apple at nighttime, it would be more blue, like a bluish red, because it's not in a bright white light. And just to give some sense that the story was a flashback. So I could have done the whole issue as during sunset or whatever, but in the issue it's never specified in the writing, in the script, what time of day it is. So there's a bit of freedom there just to say, oh, there could have been a storm or whatever. It could be mid-afternoon. And again, because the yellow is such a distinctive color tint to the opening page, and we're going to see the same room again at the end where it's yellow, the passing of time in the day from the blues to the sunset ties it all together, so it's not just a harsh pop back to this point in time. Because at this point in the comic, by the time he's finished saying the story and the Guardian says, "Who are you?" we're caught up. So the events where it was recounting the events, it was at a different point in time of the day, because obviously he's talking about the early point of the day, if that makes sense. So then there's an opportunity to do a sunset to add in more of that yellow again, so that it ties in with this last page, so it's not just an abrupt color change from blue to yellow. There's a gradual sense, because the story from the flashback monologue to the Guardian interview monologue is all coming together, and that's the reason why I did it. I did add a little underneath his legs on the throne. You said make it look like a throne that's just been carved out of wood or whatever, just a cool looking chair. He's sat on a little red piece of cloth as well, but you don't really see that at any other point in the story. It was just something to give a little bit of depth to the
I see what you mean.
image, because a lot of my panels I always draw with this dead on front angle. Most of the time it's because of cool moments like this. I want it to be as clear as possible. There's no point me shooting a top down high angle, because it wouldn't look as impactful. So just having something, because even though the back of the chair is further into the background, and then the armrest that is on is more closer to you as a viewer, it still looks fairly flat because it's in such a small room, so there's not much room for perspective. You can see on the table it has a diagonal down, because that's going to a vanishing point. And so just to make the chair look a little bit less flat, I just put a bit of fabric overlapping on it just to make it look a bit more realistic or whatever. Just something extra. But again, that also ties into the Zombie King page later on, which I think that's why I did it because in the promotional image that we did of the Zombie King, on his throne, which looks similar to this, has a massive red carpet on it, and it's connected to whatever's draped on the chair. So that idea came from this little bit I put in here for whatever random reason. That happens when you when you create stuff. You'll just think of one tiny thing, and then you'll find a way to bring it naturally into another aspect. It's not just there for no reason. It makes sense. If it was just there and we never saw any fabric on the chair, it kind of served no purpose, because it's not they're trying to make him as comfortable as possible. He's being interrogated. Other people get interrogated there. But I just thought it was something cool that tied into something even cooler when we did the Zombie King image.
Now, I know this is the last page of issue 1, but just curious. Actually, you know what? You can actually see the one of. I think this is the second image you drew and sent in. It's not the rider being pulled. I'm going to put that in the video, but it's...
Yeah, the first image was when it was a novel still, and I gave you... That was what that comment is about, is saying that I did a little mock cover for a slip cover if it was going to be a hardcover novel, and then that image is what I did for your Facebook, because it was pretty barren.
Oh yeah.
But as you can see, there's no handcuff clamp on there, because it wasn't finalized how prisoners would be secure, and that stump's very small in comparison to the original one because it looks like you could just stand up and walk away from that. It doesn't look imposing. That's why I put in the handcuffs, unless you specifically told me. I just can't remember. But the handcuffs was just a way of making it a bit more intense.
I can't remember, but for some reason I remember there was originally a waist lock or something like that. I'm going to go back and read the old one, but I'm almost positive there was some waist lock. So it was rope on his hands, but it was the lock on the waist that really kept him there. But for anyone interested, with the prisoner and the zombies in the background, if James ever did a cover like that, like a special whatever, that's probably what it would look like. And that is as close as it would get to one of the original concepts before we even started this of what a cover would look like. The prisoner against wood, feeding post, and then with two zombies behind him. So if we do ever get published,
we can even show the original pages that I sent you as samples.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna put them throughout the video. But if we ever get published and they ask, because they're gonna ask for a different cover. There's no way around that. With how many issues we sold and shit like that, there's gonna have to be something different with it. And if we did give them a different cover, I think that would be one that would be really fun to do. Since we talked about it, it's one of the original concept ideas. Unless we come up with some awesome different idea, that would be pretty cool. But I know this is the last page with, the 19, but I did want to connect this to issue 2 just a moment because we used issue 2, page 1 as a poster, promotional poster. A lot of people by now have seen some of it or all of it. But just to close this out, when you were working on page 2 at all, did you ever go back and look at how it would connect when you read them together as a volume? Like, what was your process diving into the story again with that page 2 after leaving off from this final page in issue 1?
Probably the most anticlimactic answer. On my end, there wasn't much thought because I, as the artist and not the writer, have to trust the writer in some kind of structure. So, like, at the time, obviously, drawing this page, I didn't know that it would connect to a page that would make sense, like, when you read it into a volume. It's just handy that it does. Like, it just makes more sense when you read it in a volume because it is it's a different page compared to the end of this issue and the rest of issue 2. So some people obviously would question, like, what the hell is this? Like, but it makes sense, like, with the question, who are you? And it's the rider thinking back to certain events that he's been involved in.
Oh, yeah.
So it ties it together that way.
Yeah, but like art style, like coming up with the art and where they go. I know we had a loose outline, which was kind of everything sprawled out the way it is, kind of, but you really, shaped everything and made it more of a poster, more presentable. Was there ever any looking back to this issue to see how it would connect, or did you just come up with all the coloring and the cool whatever? Because what I'm getting at is when you put the last page and the first page together, at first, when I was just thinking of it from a writing standpoint, I was a little worried about doing it without doing the stupid foggy imaging. So it was beating them on the head like, oh, this is them. You know what I mean? I was worried about how it would come together. But if you look at them now together, I have one that I put together in that video. They look so good side by side together. I friggin' love it. I was just curious when you were doing the art and the coloring, and were you ever looking at it, how it would look together and colored it? Because it looks like it fits together, like you're reading it in a volume. You know what I mean?
I think that came from the fact, well, the colouring helps tie it together. By the time I started colouring that memories page, we would have discussed all this about tying it together. So the fact that it's like so yellow is possibly what you're talking about as well. Yeah, like it was a subtle hint, even though it was also the intention of the colouring was to show the city in flames, but without like being too on the nose and drawing actual fire. But yeah, like color-wise, it matches together well. So that somewhere down the line, that entered into my mind. But a lot of the times, and it's a weird thing to say, but things just tend to work when you get used to like drawing or writing a certain way. Like you may write something like so small that actually turns into something significant later or connects together, but you didn't really intend it that way when you wrote it. It was just that sticks in your head, and then when you get to that next thing, something reminds you. So like the coloring was like what made it gel together even more. And in terms of like laying out the page, if I find the image, we can put that up as well, because the layout was a lot different. I think it was just more basic of just being panels and not being such a connected one. Because like on the memories page, you have like the guy with the tomahawk, but it's all blood. But that's his shaped from the blood from the clown image, where the blood's coming out of the stump of the arm, which I thought was cool. So that was just a way of like linking it all together. And it was also a process of that guy's not fully dead or a zombie, and then it flows together with the blood, and then at the blood puddle where there's she's not there, right next to it is the rider with the body bags, showing that the bodies are dead there, and then right at the bottom of the page is creeps to show the very final stage of death, if that makes sense. Like I'm saying it as I'm picturing it in my head. I'm not actually looking at the image, but I'm assuming you're looking at the image as I'm saying this. But yeah, like
that's how they go.
It just flows better. What you see as the final image flows better, being all connected. But that was a tricky thing, because you are like drawing completely separate images in different settings, trying to make it fit together. And the coloring was another way of like putting it together. Like the Doomsday Cowboy, like he has hints of yellow because that's close to the yellow from the fire from the city, and so on. And then the colors start to get more deteriorated and more desaturated as it gets to the bottom of the page with the final part of the image with the creeps.
Yeah, I think I love how much they fit together so much, because you remember going into issue 2 from issue 1, if you take issue 2 and open it up, and James remembers this, the original page 1 of issue 2 is what is now page 2. And I think that's the original script, and there was always something that bugged me. Once I saw the art for issue 1 and the ending, there was always something that bugged me going right from the "Who are you?", which was an idea I loved originally. Who are you? And then the next page it says, "Who are you?" And I still love a part of that, but there still was there's something just missing. And then I had that idea of, I didn't know how to explain it. I did not want it to be this, the whole page is foggy. It's clearly a flashback or a memory. And I remember talking to you about it. I wanted kind of that, but a little more structured, like a little more paneled. And it actually, what it ended up turning into is, I think, one of my all-time favorite pages, like probably forever. It's my desktop background. I want to get them printed out as posters. But yeah, that issue 2 page, because this is another fun thing for people reading the comic, is as the story unfolds, you're going to see something on page 1 of issue 2, and every time the writer goes through something, or anyone else, like the clown and the blood and the tomahawk, the Doomsday couple, the Doomsday Cowboy, all that stuff, one at a time, little by little, will enter the story, and then it'll all make sense how it connects to issue 1 and all the characters. And I'm going to stop because I keep messing it up. Anyway, I love it. Correct me if I'm wrong, James, but you actually gave him a subtle middle finger on the writer in this last panel, and that is to parallel something that happened with the prisoner. And I'll put the images up after the prisoner gives the writer one last headbutt, just to be a prick, and the rider stomps him into the feeding post and then continues to beat his ass with his fists. He stops and he says, "I stop because there's only one right way for him to die." And if you look, you can see what seems to be the prisoner starting to pull out his middle finger. He's groggy, but he's starting to pull out. Is that what you were going for with the middle finger there?
Yeah, it was just a little fun joke because they have history, and it's just the fact that the rider stopped in his tracks to continue beating him to death. The prisoner has now got like a little chance to breathe, but he's not going to say anything because it would ruin the comic by putting another speech bubble in. So I just thought it'd be funny, like he's giving him the middle finger as a little soul gesture, just to, because he's given up at this point. And it's the same with the rider in the chair. Like he's finished being interrogated, and so he's kind of like given up. He's just gonna be straight with the Guardian because the Guardian kind of knows something. So as a little joke, the rider's just giving him the middle finger as well.
I know you pointed that out with the rider previously. I don't remember. Maybe I do, but I forgot about the prisoner also. Maybe I do, but I just forgot. But yeah, that's cool how that parallels. I like that. And they're both just getting it up like they're a little,
Yeah,
like,
they want to like do a full-on like
been a
fuck
long
you
day.
middle finger.
Yeah, that'd be too obvious and too...
Yeah, it's kind of like he's just tired.
Yeah.
It's like, he's had enough. Because I do this all the time. Whenever like something annoys me or whatever, I just, even if it's to an inanimate object and it's pissed me off, I'll just give it the middle finger. Like, that's what happens. Like, as a writer, you write yourself into some aspects of it. It's the same with the art, like the body language. Even though this is a character, it's the fact that I'm drawing what I know, and so sometimes my mannerisms will subtly creep into the artwork as well. And that concludes the commentary for issue 1. Me and Ronnie, even though he'll say himself, want to take the opportunity again to thank everybody in the Map family for supporting us. Without you, there would be no comic. So this is your fault, not ours.
Well said. And remember, if you guys got any thoughts, opinions, suggestions, if you want to carry the conversation on a little more, if you want to know anything a little more about issue 1, put them down below, because the way we're looking at it is we can explain some of the art and then some of the writing, some of the ideas behind some stuff. But if you guys have anything else, maybe we'll come back here and explore something else. James said it better than I did. Thank you guys for all the support. Love yous.